Hi, I'm Unruly Anime. The story begins as we learn about a gigantic floating fortress that appeared out of nowhere. Its appearance marks the beginning of the never-ending war between humans and monsters. We are then introduced to the highest-ranking divine dragon rangers, called the Dragon Keepers. The monsters arrived in the floating fortress 13 years ago, and there has been a weekly Sunday showdown between the Keepers and the monsters ever since. It's a huge event, and crowds of people come to watch every week. A reporter gets everyone excited as he explains that the Rangers are on high alert. This is because monster experts predict that the Monster Army will be deploying their secret weapon. In today's showdown, the Red Keeper appears to greet everyone, and the news reporter makes sure to catch it on camera. Red is the chief of the Dragon Force and the Dragon Keeper's reliable leader. The entire event is a huge spectacle, and people all over the world tune in to watch it. In the area below the fortress, our protagonist is told that this place will soon turn into a battlefield, and the Rangers will do their best to ensure his safety. Our boy isn't impressed by their little protector routine as he looks around and thinks about how this place looks more like a shopping mall than a battlefield. It's pretty clear to him that there aren't many risks, especially since there haven't been any civilian casualties in years. The Girl Ranger just admits that it's part of their protocol to say what they just said. Our boy admires them for being part of the Ranger Force at such a young age, but he is told that he can join too. It's actually highly encouraged, and getting accepted into the Ranger Force isn't that hard. However, becoming a Dragon Keeper is a completely different story. Our boy doesn't seem too interested at first, but the Girl Ranger tells him that it's up to him, and he gets an intense feeling. With that over, he goes to watch the battle and enters the floating fortress underpass called Amanagawa City. In the arena, the monsters called Dusters teleport out of the fortress. And their leader this time is the giant tiger. The crowd erupts, ready to see a fight, and they mock the monsters for never learning their lesson and always coming back. Every week, they humiliate the monsters and throw trash on them while telling them that they will lose. Just then, the Dragon Keepers arrive, and Red Keeper declares that the monsters will never have their way. The planet belongs to humans, and they will protect it from monsters like them. The Dragon Keepers strike a pose. And the crowd screams out for their saviors. The monster leader explains that he's a monster born from all the collective grudges of the tigers in this world. He vows that it's time for the stupid surface dwellers to get what they deserve, and he will bring chaos to this world. The crowd becomes concerned, and the monster speaks to them next. He declares that this isn't some kind of suit for them to be enjoying, and he sends his Dusters to attack the crowd. Luckily for the citizens, the Rangers are in charge of protecting them. Suzukiri is the girl from before, and she tells Sakurama to get the people to safety. The monster leader unleashes a powerful attack and sends the Dragon Keepers flying. The crowd has gone silent, and the leader is now the one mocking the Keepers. Red Keeper points out that they have never fought such a powerful monster before, but Green Keeper takes the lead, since strength is his specialty. He crushes the leader with a boulder and strikes his own hero pose. Just then, everyone is shocked as the monster tiger destroys the boulder and laughs like a maniac. The crowd has gotten pretty terrified at this point. They can tell that it's going to take way more than that to defeat this monster, and they wonder why the Keepers aren't using the divine artifact. The tiger declares that he is invincible, and he transforms into the most dangerous weapon in the anime, a truck. The Keepers team up to stop it, but they are no match for the tiger truck hybrid. The crowd can't believe what they are witnessing, and they begin to wonder if humanity is really done for. This time, the tiger celebrates as the crowd determines that he's too strong, but one boy yells out and tells the Dragon Keeper not to lose. This is all it takes, as the Keepers begin to stand up and proclaim that they cannot lose, not as long as there is someone left to protect. The kid is amazed by his heroes, and they declare that they will stand up as many times as it takes to win. One of the Dusters is surprised to see that they're going to use the divine artifact so soon, and he instructs the other Dusters to group up. They all then get ready for one of their classic routines. The keepers will blast them back to the fortress, where they will simply reconstruct themselves. The dusters can't wait to hear their leaders lose their speech afterwards, but the dummy forgot to prepare one. The one they call Fighter D makes a suggestion, but his body is shot since Fighter D wasn't supposed to be on shift for this battle. Their little argument is interrupted. When the keepers are ready to fire at them, everyone prepares to get blasted away. But Fighter D is sick of putting up the same act every week. He walks towards the keepers as they fire the divine artifact, and everyone tries to stop him. He declares that he is done with this fake pretense, and the weapon causes a huge explosion. The crowd cheers for the keeper's victory, and the Red Keeper declares that it's time for commercials. We then get a look at what was going on 1 hour earlier inside the monster's fortress. The dusters were panicking, as they only had an hour left to come up with this week's monster. Coming up with a new monster idea every week is really difficult, and some of them have even given up. A radio broadcast talks about the weekly battle, so they try to get some ideas from there. But there's no hope. The dusters then talk about how unfortunate their situation is. Their floating fortress fell to the keepers just 1 year after they arrived on the planet, and all their monster bosses were wiped out. A few dusters were all that remained, but they're just foot soldiers, and they know that there isn't much they can do on their own. They are running out of time, so Fighter G jumps into action and comes up with an idea for a super strong monster with bulging muscles. The impressive idea is rejected by the calmest of the dusters, and he reminds the others that abstract monster ideas don't leave lasting impressions on the audience. It's going to lose the moment it steps on stage, so the monsters need to be more memorable. This calm duster is Fighter A, and the others remind him that they don't have time to worry about details. It's all pretty frustrating for the group of foot soldiers, since they wouldn't be in this mess if their bosses were still around. The female Fighter L comes up with an idea, but it just ends up being a cute cat monster. She tries to convince the others by pointing out that the surface dwellers will love it, but Fighter A points out that they aren't supposed to love it. They need to create a big, bad monster that strikes fear into little kids, so Fighter L tries to change it into a lion. This gets rejected as well, since they already used the lion 7 years ago. Fighter D is the next to speak up, and he reveals that they haven't used a tiger yet. The others think it would be pretty cool to lose with a tiger, but Fighter D gets so furious that they're already thinking about losing. He reminds them that they are monsters, and they're supposed to take down anyone that gets in their way, including the Dragon Keepers. He refuses to give up on trying to win, but the others tell them to quiet down so they can listen to the broadcast. Fighter D tells them not to listen to that garbage, since it's just a bunch of stuff made to please the surface dwellers. Fighter D doesn't want them to create a monster that will just be defeated. He thinks they should be using this time to come up with a strategy to win. He says that this will be the only way they will be able to complete the mission, but the others don't even remember what their mission was. Fighter D reminds them that it's world dominance. Their leaders might be gone, but he thinks they're still supposed to fight to make this world theirs. Fighter D tries to inspire them with his speech, but they all just laugh at him. They credit him for being ambitious, but they still mock his goal, so Fighter D fights them all. Afterwards, Fighter F tells him to calm down. Fighter D wonders why he isn't more mad, so F tells them that they have resigned themselves to being satisfied with what they have now. They have fought and lost against the Keepers 1,000 times, so he should be used to it by now. Fighter D isn't, and points out that it's only been 998 times. It doesn't matter to Fighter F, as he explains that they lost the moment their bosses were exterminated. They now invade the planet every week, but the real goal is to not let the civilians know that it's all just an act. This is simply a condition for the truce they made on the day their bosses were exterminated. They might not even be considered monsters anymore, so it's simply time for Fighter D to accept that. The monsters decide to go with the tiger idea, so they ask, which duster is good at acting like a tiger? Fighter C is willing to give it a try, so they reference the animal encyclopedia that the Rangers gave them to get an idea of what it's supposed to look like. Fighter Z transforms into the tiger monster, so they start trying to think of a name for it. Fighter D is sure that he's the best transformer, but he explains that he isn't on today's shift. F wonders where he has been going lately, but D is focused on something else. He declares that he will never volunteer as boss, not if they're just meant to be defeated. F tells D about something that happened in the last battle. He was severely injured, and he saw a small surface dweller nearby. The dusters are clearly the enemies of humanity, But this small surface dweller still encouraged F to do his best. It didn't make any sense, but F admits that hearing it didn't feel half bad. F feels that for those who don't know the truth, he has to do his best. The Dusters make the Rangers stand out, and the audience gets really excited. If that is their purpose now, then it doesn't matter to F if they lose. He will just do his best to play the perfect monster. Fighter D clearly does not feel the same way. Back to the President, the Dusters have just been hit by the Rangers' ultimate technique, called the Dragon's Breath. Everyone celebrates as the future of humanity has once again been protected. The Keepers are all shocked, though, when one does remain standing. It's Fighter D, and he points out that just because they're immortal, that doesn't mean that the Keepers can just do whatever they want to them. They can still feel pain, and monsters aren't just meant to take a beating. Fighter D knows full well that they're just putting up an act for the citizens, but they're just repeating the same thing over and over again every week. He wonders if the Keepers are really satisfied with that and thinks that they should want more. Fighter D suggests that they change things up a bit, and he declares that the monsters should win this time. The Keepers point out that this isn't what they agreed to, and they tell him that he still has time to make it back to the fortress. Fighter D is furious and decides it is time to finally end the rigged games. He vows to take them down with a real fight and ferociously charges right at them. This charge isn't as dramatic as he would like, as Fighter D is really just running at them. The Keepers mock him, but Red knows just what to do. He puts on a good show and declares that this monster is a formidable opponent. A few civilians are glad to finally see a monster with some guts, and one kid even tells him to do his best. Fighter D just thinks about telling them to shut up, since he assumes that they just want to see a trash mob get beaten up pathetically. The civilians always upset him, since they're obviously just looking down on him. He vows to make their stupid, ignorant faces twitch with fear and declares that he is a proud monster. Fighter D attacks the Red Keeper, but Red just tells him that he did a good job today. This isn't the kind of place for his kind to shine, though, so Red just tells him to shut up and lose like he is supposed to. Red declares that he is justice and slices Fighter D in half. The other Keepers humiliate him even more by firing their weapon at him, and the crowd erupts with cheer. Fighter D has had enough and realizes that he doesn't even look like a bad guy anymore. In the fortress, the Dusters point out that they have gone through 999 battles, and they were all losses. Fighter D hasn't returned yet, but this isn't very surprising. Many of them have run off because they couldn't stand what they were doing. For the rest of them, doing what the humans tell them to do is the only way for them to survive. Down below, we see that Fighter D has chosen a different path. He has concluded that they're not even fit to be villains. Nothing has changed, and they will just continue to be slaves for humans. However, Fighter D is sick of staying silent and doing their bidding. He is completely enraged and slowly transforms himself into a human. Just then, Suzukiri shows up and recognizes him as the guy she met earlier. Our protagonist pretends that he was just trying to get a better view of the fight, and she wonders what he thought about the battle. D explains that it was amazing to see the Keepers up close, as they are really strong. Their strength has really inspired him, so he says that he wants to be just like them. Suzukiri assumes that this means he wants to join the Rangers, and D mischievously states that it sounds like a great idea. It's such a good idea that he's even considering taking the recruitment exam. There seems to be some strange tension as to why Suzukiri is glad to see him so fired up about it. D vows to take them down and defeat all his enemies, as we see that he's looking right at a billboard of the Keepers. Sometime later, we see D running laps. He gets distracted by a ranger with weird hair, and he thinks about how these small fry rangers don't know that the battle against the monsters is just a show. D refocuses and reminds himself why he infiltrated the enemy's stronghold. It's so he can take out the Dragon Keepers that wiped out his bosses. A look back shows that D arrived at the Ranger headquarters in search of the Dragon Keepers. The receptionist wasn't very helpful, as she explained that the Keepers weren't there. Just then, Sakurama and Suzukiri showed up, excited that he had come to take the recruitment exam. Suzukiri points out that D could still fail the exam, but Sakurama believes in him. Sakurama gets a little too close, causing these human disguises to crack. Fighters have weaker bodies compared to surface dwellers, and Suzukiri looks like she might be staring right at the crack. D fears that she might have figured out his secret, but she just invites him to go eat lunch. D is relieved that they haven't figured out that he is a monster and thinks about how gullible the surface dwellers are. Back in the fortress, the Dusters enjoy their free time with some games, but one of them warns that the Dragon Keepers have arrived. Red Keeper tells them not to be so nervous, as he is not there to fight, and reminds them that they are comrades who formed the truce agreement. He insists that the Dusters smile, but Bookkeeper points out that this isn't the time to smile and reminds him that one of the Dusters betrayed them. He suspects that all the Dusters were in on it, but Fighter A explains that Fighter D did it on his own. Blue still doesn't trust them and demands that Fighter D step forward. Fighter A explains that D never returned after the last battle, but Blue suspects that they are hiding him. He decides that Fighter A will be punished in his place, but the Civil Red Keeper points out that the Dusters were betrayed by Fighter D as well. They are suffering the same way they are, and the only person at fault is Fighter D Blue. He accepts his decision and just asks that they be informed when Fighter D returns. Red Keeper points out that they have all been partners for over a decade, but due to recent events, they have decided to take some safety measures to prevent another betrayal. He introduces Shinta and Aaron, two Blue Squadron members that will be stationed at the fortress, along with their men. The Dusters will live under their supervision from now on and take orders from them when needed. Fighter C stands up against the tyrannical behavior and reminds the Keepers that the fortress belongs to them. The other Dusters try to calm him down, but he doesn't listen, so the Blue Keeper silences him. He promises to end his life if he doesn't stop, so Fighter A begs for forgiveness to protect C. He is glad that they have agreed, since the weak should always obey the strong and not fight back. He believes that conflicts only happen when one party doesn't understand their place. Red declares that they are one step closer to world peace and gives a demonstration of his immense power. This is clearly a threat, and Red declares that traitors will be ended relentlessly, just like they did to the Dusters' bosses. Fighter F realizes that he can never do what D did. Instead, he will just do as the Keepers tell him and live on in shame. He does get a bit upset, and he wonders if this is really all he can do. Back with D, he walks himself through the steps to eating a steak, just like a human would, because D was asking. Suzukiri explains that the Dragon Keepers are rarely at the headquarters. They are usually in their individual garrisons that are spread out across Managawa City. Sakurama explains that rangers like them have a lot of duties other than fighting Dusters. They help clean up the city and even help the police solve crimes. D figures that this would just make things more devastating for them if they found out that the battle with monsters is just an act. Saying it out loud was a terrible mistake, but luckily, Suzukiri just thinks he's talking about a conspiracy video. Someone made a video saying it was all a ploy made up by the Rangers, so our boy just goes along with it. D can't believe that he made such a stupid mistake, but this at least confirms that the Rangers don't know what's really going on. Just then, D gets a glimpse of just how popular the Rangers are. One kid thanks them for saving them, and the restaurant even gives them free food. Sakurama declares that he is proud to be a member of the Ranger Force, but his hatred for them only grows. He thinks about how easy their lives are and how food must taste great when people shower them with praise. Things are completely different in the fortress, since they don't even get to look at delicious food like what they eat on the surface. The Rangers head back to do their duties, and D overhears that Suzukiri is going to the Red Garrison. D comes up with an idea and calls the Ranger fan over to look at the picture he took. D reminds himself to stay cool-minded and not be so hasty while he thinks about how Red told him to keep his mouth shut and lose like he is supposed to. D also reminds himself that he is cold-blooded and a proud monster. He takes a good look at the picture of Sakurama and shockingly transforms himself into him right there. The kid is the only one that noticed, and D just thanked the server for the food moments later. It is a curious surprise that Sakurama decided to come with her to the Red Garrison. It's really D, so he just plays it off and thinks about how he's just there to scout the area. D reminds himself to keep his cool as we see that he is carrying a weapon, and he asks if he could deliver a letter to the Red Keeper. D fears that she might be suspicious of him, but luckily she just agrees to let him. Suzukiri uses her status as a Yellow Squadron member to open the entrance, and D assures himself that he can accomplish his mission. The second the Red Keeper shows an opening, D will go right for his head. The only problem is that D has only met the Red Keeper in battle, so he doesn't know if he wears his mask outside of combat. This proves to be a big problem, as there are a bunch of Red members inside, and D can't tell if one of them is the Red Keeper. D doesn't get a chance to ask, as the guys just wonder what a colorless ranger like Sakurama is doing there. D explains that he has business with the Red Keeper. So one guy says that he is him. D is sure that he can take his life from this range. But Akori reveals that this is just some guy named Tokita. The guy admits that it was just a joke, but he wonders what D was planning to do. D fears that he has been caught and tries to explain that he has a letter that needs to be delivered. Tokita picks on him as he knows the real Sakurama, but luckily Suzukiri breaks it up. She gives him the letter to give to the Red Keeper, and Tokita tells Suzukiri that she should join the Red Squadron. She is not able to shine in the Yellow Squadron because it focuses on research and development. Suzukiri likes the flexibility it gives her, but Tokira points out that the Red Squadron is much better since they specialize in monster extermination. He thinks that every ranger dreams of defeating monsters, and that would even be true for colorless independent ones like Sakurama just. And D becomes enraged when he remembers all their faces from the battlefield. Luckily, Suzukiri changes the subject so they can leave. D can only hold his head down as they leave, and the Red Squadron brags about how many monsters they eliminated. D once again reminds himself that he is cool-headed. He is not running away. He's just retreating for now. D becomes upset when he realizes that it's the same thing and that it's what he has always done. Just then, D is shocked when he sees a picture of what the Red Keeper looks like, and even more surprised when he appears to introduce himself as such. D completely freezes in front of him and tells himself to move, as there's no point in holding back. Luckily, Suzukiri just says that he is frozen from the shock of seeing his idol and drags him away. D stops to congratulate Suze on his victory against the monsters and warns him that the monsters are so despicable that they might try something. Suze is glad to have rangers like him watching his back, and they part ways outside. Suzukiri explains that she got really nervous when he started talking to Suze. Suzukiri tells him to give her the knife, so he does, and D explains that he didn't even get to use it. Our absent-minded protagonist doesn't remember telling her about the knife, and she shockingly uses it to cut him. Surprisingly, she tells him that he needs to be more careful, or else he will be exposed immediately since he is so weak. Suzukiri reveals to Fighter D that she has been covering for him the entire day. She was impressed that he was able to stay so calm, but points out that the Red Keeper would have easily turned the tables on him if he tried anything. D wonders just who the heck she is, so she explains that she is his enemy. D tries to fight her, but she easily slices them up over and over again. D decides that they should just talk instead, so Suzukiri reveals that she has a favor to ask. She wants them to work together, and she promises to teach them how to defeat the Rangers. After she teaches him, this evil girl wants them to destroy the Ranger force together. Just then, the real Sakurama shows up, and our boy has changed back to his human form. Sakurama reveals that a monster has appeared, but this is really strange since it's not Sunday. D wonders what is going on and says Korea is shocked when he disappears. Elsewhere, we see that the monster that has appeared is Fighter F. Fighter F is chased by the Red Squadron, and D arrives to wonder what he is thinking. Tokita manages to land a headshot on F and asks him not to put up a fight by regenerating over and over again. F is furious, but he explains that he couldn't find who he was looking for, so he will just head back to the fortress. Just then, a voice declares that he won't be allowed to go back. It's so sad, and he says that it's time for him to transform into the Red Keeper. Red reminds F that they just gave the Disters a warning, and he's disappointed to see that he's already betraying them. D is then shocked when Red pulls out his divine artifact, the only thing that can permanently eliminate a Duster. Red acknowledges that F has died multiple times, but today he will learn what true death is like. He declares that villains will always be villains, and they simply need to be purged by justice. Red then activates his divine artifact, called Red Salamandra. In the face of this powerful attack, F concedes that this was always meant to happen, as he is just a simple fighter. He wonders where D is and what he is trying to do in this moment. F can't help but agree with the Red Keeper. Fighters like him might try to bask in the cheers of the civilians, but that doesn't change the fact that they are villains trying to invade the surface. They are the Monster Army, so F does his part and demands that the Red Keeper bring it on. D calls out to his friend, but it's no use as the divine artifact's attack strikes him directly, consuming him in its flames. Red is pleased with himself as he declares that it was his ultimate technique. We can still hear F's voice as he apologizes to D for fighting and losing. However, compared to the past 30 meaningless years of doing nothing, he actually feels good today. I appreciate you viewing my anime recap, Unruly Family. Please let me know what you think about Go. Go, Loser Ranger, by liking, sharing, subscribing, and leaving a comment.
Take you